Week on the Locked On Predators podcast, we're going to put on our general manager hats and we're going to wrestle with the tough off-season decisions ahead of Barry Trotz. Today, we're going to have a very frank discussion about some veterans.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast. We're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off our Monday episode, of course, with a shout out to our Locked On Pred heads. Those are our everyday listeners who tune in to talk Nashville Predators hockey with us Monday through Friday. We appreciate your support. We love that we get to spend just a little bit of your day with you. I'm Ann Kimmel. I am a writer at Penalty Box Radio. And my friends, I am so excited to officially introduce you to the newest partner in crime, Miss Emma Lingen. Emma, how are you?
Hello. I'm so excited. I'm so happy to be here officially.
Official. So in case anybody didn't catch the end of Friday's episode, Nick has stepped away from the podcast. He's focusing on some other things right now, but Nick and I were so excited about bringing Emma on board to Locked On Predators. When we knew behind the scenes that Nick was stepping away, the name that came up, Emma, immediately was you. We were like, oh, we really want Emma. We want Emma. So
I'm honored.
We are so glad that you're here. Can't wait for everybody to get to know you even better and talk Predators hockey with us. You've been doing the sports thing for a long, long time. This is certainly not your sports first rodeo.
Oh no, I've had several rodeos by now in different sports too, but no, each new adventure is still exciting. It's still new and I'm still happy to be a part of this.
Yeah, it's going to be great. So excited that you're here. So everybody make sure you give Emma a shout out in the comments. We're super glad that she's here and she's coming on a great week because Emma, this week we are just going to pretend like we have the power. And, this is how things are going to get improved by the Nashville Predators if they, in theory, put you and I in charge. What could go wrong?
Just put more women in positions of power. I mean,
my gosh, let's go. Let's go. So we're going to be GMs this week. Emma and I are putting on our general manager hats. We're going to give Barry Trotz the week off if he takes a vacation. I don't know if he's much of a vacationer. I can't picture Trotz on the beach, but I don't know. But we're going to put on our general manager hats this week. So we're going to tackle some of the biggest conversations that are likely going to be happening around the Nashville Predators in the offseason. I mean, we're going to talk about everything from free agents. And we're going to talk about, well, who's in the pipeline who could come up to heaven help us. Emma and I may need a drink. We're going to this week later on talk about goaltending. Oh my gosh, that's going to be a whole episode. But today, Emma and I are going to be talking about the veterans on the team for the Nashville Predators. We have all kinds of quotes. We heard from some of the veterans after the season was over. We want to talk about what we're seeing from them, what we need to see from them, what place they have on the roster going forward. We're going to hear from Roman Yosi. We're going to hear from Ryan McDonough. Also going to talk about that top veteran line going forward as well. What can we expect from them? To kick all of this off, though, Emma, I thought what we do is just play a clip that you and I heard live and in person from Barry Trotz talking about what is sort of the vision going forward. So just so everybody knows, this is sort of what Barry Trotz laid out for us at Locker Room Cleanout Day.
In a couple of goals going forward, we're going to be a little bit younger. I want to be a little bit faster. I want to build that top nine. I think I talked about that from day one. I think that's the way of the future. I think we had a real strong identity line in the McCarron line. They were really good, especially the back half of the year and into the playoffs. So we've got a lot of good pieces, and we got great leadership like I say, it's going to be a journey. It's not always going to be a straight line, because we're all human, and life's not always perfect. So, but this is the start. It's not the end. It's something that we're going to continue to build the next couple of years here.
So Emma, this was kind of the same outlook that we got from Barry Trotz last offseason when he took over as general manager, talked about, getting a little bit younger. And yet this was a roster that was pretty veteran heavy, I would say.
Yeah. I know a lot of people, when they heard that video that we just played or heard the audio from it, were saying, well, he said that last year. He wanted to get younger and faster last year. Yes, but what he also said last year was this is going to be a process. This is going to be a multi-year process. If you got like completely younger and faster right overnight, that's called a full teardown. And that's not, I mean, we knew from the beginning that's not what he was going to be comfortable doing. And you shouldn't be doing that when you have guys like Filip Forsberg and Roman Josi on your roster. And so I think, maybe they didn't necessarily get younger in year one, but that doesn't mean that that's not the goal going forward. I mean, if you look at two things that kind of happen off the ice, like last year, what was it, 13 picks in the draft? This year they have 12 picks in the draft. I mean, those guys obviously are the guys who are going to marinate down in the AHL for a little bit, or in junior for even their first year or so. And they'll get there eventually, but it's like we have all that draft capital now, so we're going to use it. And that's kind of the outlook I have. You have to look at it at least like a 3 to 5 year plan.
Right. And I think there was a lot of people that when he signed some of these veteran players last offseason were like, you sold us a false bill of goods. But I feel like we can look back now and say, okay, Barry Trotz, you earned a little bit of credibility, because I think the thing that was so important that Trotz did, and we can dive into this as we kind of break down the veterans more specifically, is that the first thing that has to happen when you're doing what Barry Trotz wants to do with his team is it has to happen in the locker room. Like, I think it's not even so much about what happens on the ice in the first year. It's about setting the culture. And that's something Barry Trotz was big on. And when you look at the veterans that he brought in, the veterans in the room, you really needed these guys for almost like a palate cleanse, I think, in that locker room.
Yeah, and Barry even mentioned that during the same press conference that, it's not to say that the culture was bad before, but it's just, it's kind of a reset. I know that word gets used a lot, but it's kind of just almost like a reminder, like, hey, square one, this is what we're here for. It's a new management and new coach, just new everything. So we're just going to make sure that we completely are all on the same page right now. And that has to start with the leadership in the locker room. And Andrew Brunette is a kind of coach who really he is very adamant that the locker room is the player's space. And he does not like to go in there and micromanage or take control too much. So that's when you need guys who, like, of course, Roman Yosi, Ryan McDonough, but guys like Ryan O'Reilly and Gustav Nyquist and Luke Schenn to come in and kind of be those coaches, if you will, in the locker room for the younger players. Because I think, to your earlier point, I think people were concerned that, well, wait a minute, you sign all these old guys and they're blocking the path for the younger guys. And it's like, no, they're not. They're doing two things. Number one, they are kind of, like we just said, they're taking the younger guys who are there right now, the Luke Evangelistas and whatnot, kind of taking them under their wing and showing them the way. But then they're also sort of I don't know, stopgap doesn't really sound like the right word, but it's like, it buys you time. Having guys like that, it buys you time for all those draft picks that you just got to really, like I said, marinate in minor hockey and junior hockey and minor hockey, and be able to, really develop into the players that they expect them to be. And so that, because you don't want to rush them, and that's the worst thing you can do for a player. So I think that getting these guys in now, knowing where they're at in their career, and they're all aware of it too. It's not like, I mean, maybe Ryan O'Reilly is not a good example because I think he could honestly play until he's 50.
Forever.
Like it's nothing. but for the most part, I don't know. I think these guys, they understand that they have a shelf life and they know what their role is here. They're not coming in to be the future of the franchise, and they know that. And it's just kind of a mutual understanding, getting everyone on the same page of, what the culture is going to be moving forward. And that's how, that culture gets passed down to each new generation of players.
Yeah.
So I think, I hope people realize that. I hope that people understand that, I mean, maybe a little bit more so now than they did before the season. I think now that they've kind of seen it in action a little bit. But I know that maybe, but
I know there are definitely some that are still a hard sell, but I don't know.
There always will be.
There will always be those people. So let's talk about Roman Josi season. 82 games, 23 goals, 85 points, finished second in the team in points behind Filip Forsberg, tied for third in goals, tied with Gustav Nyquist. He was behind Forsberg and O'Reilly. First in assists for the season. Norris Trophy finalist. You can go on and on. What I think is so interesting about Roman Josi season is that it didn't start off the way that it ended. I felt like his start of the season, was maybe not what we anticipated. He had 3 goals in his first 15 games. He was at a -6, which I know plus minus is like, is it a stat? Is it not a stat? It's a whole thing. But then Roman Josi turned out to be just absolutely instrumental in that 18-game point streak down the line. Again, Norris Trophy finalist. So when you look at Roman Josi's season, what are the things that stand out to you?
Well, I mean, talk about we were just talking about Ryan O'Reilly. Throw Yosi in there too. I mean, ageless, like
Oh my God.
That's unbelievable.
What is he doing? What is his skincare regimen? I don't care about the on ice stuff.
Ageless in every way. Honestly, It's like it just gets better with age in every regard. On the ice, off the ice. But no, I think you mentioned that 18-game point streak. I think that was instrumental in him getting the nomination for the Norris Trophy.
Yeah.
I also, if you will recall, during that stretch, people were even throwing his name out there for the Hart Trophy. And now I don't think any of us legitimately thought that would happen. But the fact that it was even being brought up in conversation, and this is by people outside of Nashville, mind you, who aren't watching him every day like we are.
Right.
But I think that you mentioned his slower start, and I think that was honestly pretty on par with the rest of the team, like with adjusting to Brunette's system. And everyone has talked about how it's an adjustment. It's hard, especially going from, Roman has obviously played under multiple coaches here in Nashville, not just John Hines, but there was kind of a continuity there with all the previous coaches, that the system, if you want to call it that, in Nashville was heavily defensive, and it was it was defense and goaltending, and that's how we're going to win, and that's and the offense was always kind of secondary. And so Andrew Brunette comes in, completely flips that on its head, and now it's offense. And certainly Roman is an offensive defenseman, we know that, but I think that just everyone who had been there and was used to the system being what it was, I think, it took them time to adjust. Even godlike humans like Roman Josi sometimes need a little bit of time. You just need a minute. Yeah, you need a minute sometimes, and that's okay. And so, I even remember, and you think about it, during locker cleanout day this year, talking to different guys, like I think Cody Glass was the one who said, like, I didn't realize how hard it was going to be. Like, I knew it was going to be hard to adjust, but I didn't realize how hard. And so maybe the veterans aren't really going to vocalize that necessarily, but I think on some level it's hard for everyone, and everyone's just kind of adjusting. UC Saros didn't have a good start to the year either. Roman didn't have, again, it's not like bad, but I think we're so used to him carrying this team. And just because he wasn't doing that for the first 15, 20 games or so, everyone was like, oh no, what's happening? Yeah. But I think we've seen, it was vintage Roman from the All-Star break on. Like, it's ridiculous that he is as good as he is.
He is a little bit ridiculous. My favorite thing is how much grief he gets from PK Subban when PK Subban has anything to say about Roman Josi. He always just refers to him as, needing a new face and
The ugliest captain in the league. Yeah. Well, that's because I think, and look, I love PK, but I think nobody loves PK Subban more than PK Subban. And so I think he probably recognizes that Roman, indisputably has it all over him in the looks department. So,
yeah.
you just got to admit that as a guy, I would feel like you have to just
own it.
Yeah, and just be like, so I feel like he feels the need to get those jabs in sometimes, but it's like, PK, we get it. We get it. You're jealous. He's a beautiful man and you're jealous. It's okay. It's all right.
Yep.
I would be jealous too. Like if I was a man and I saw Roman Josi, I would want to look like him too. So I get it.
That's right. Well, coming up, we're actually going to hear from Roman Josi. We're going to hear what he had to say at Locker Room Cleanout. And then we're going to talk about whether we think he's going to win the Norris. Plus, we got to talk about the veterans that were so pivotal on that top line for the Nashville Predators. We're going to do all of that coming up here in just a minute. First, I want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Policy Genius. Look, we love coming on here talking about hockey and the Nashville Predators, but we do want to take a minute to talk about something that is a bit more serious, and that's life insurance. Life insurance is an important safety net for your family, but trying to find the right policy on your own can be time-consuming and overwhelming. Policy Genius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace, there to help you navigate the world of life insurance. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 a year for $1 million in coverage. Some options offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. Policy Genius helps you compare your options from top companies, and their team of licensed experts is on hand to help talk you through it. You can easily compare quotes from America's top insurers in just a few clicks to find your lowest price. And Policy Genius's experts give you unbiased advice. They have no incentive to recommend one insurer over another, so you can trust their guidance. Check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com/lockedonnhl or click the link in the description below to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/lockedonnhl. So we've been talking about Roman Josi. Who does not want to talk about Roman Josi? And we got to hear from Roman Josi. He talked a little bit at Locker Room Cleanout. And one of the things that I thought was so interesting that he talked about was just his game. And at this stage in his career, what does it look like to continue to grow in his game? So this is what Roman Josi had to say about that.
I try to improve every year. I think there's always, when I look at my game, there was always things that I can improve on, and obviously I'm getting older. I'm definitely in the second half of my career, but I'm a very curious person. I always try to find things, even other players, watch other players, or see what other players do, and on every aspect, right? The mental aspect, the game itself, the skill, and off ice and all that stuff. So I just always try to improve, and it's this game. I think also the older you get, this game is a lot of fun. So that's kind of the most important thing. You got to have fun out there, and it's a lot of games, and being able to play with a group like this year and coming together, having the team we had, the connection we had as teammates, that makes it a lot of fun and just makes it a lot easier.
I love what he said in that quote. I thought it was so interesting when he first said it. I was like, come on, chew on that for a minute. But he talked about, I'm a curious person. And I don't know if you watch Ted Lasso, but we're huge Ted Lasso fans in our house. And he talks about being a curious person. And I instantly was like, oh my gosh, Roman Josi's Ted Lasso. He's not. He's himself. But I love what he's saying, because when you talk about veterans, you always talk about their age in hockey years, which is not real. But you talk about their age and you talk about their decline. So Josi at 33, people are like, is this, is he in decline? But I love what he said about I'm still learning. I'm still looking for areas of my game to improve. I'm watching hockey. I'm a curious person about how to improve my game. And I think that's so encouraging when you hear a veteran like Roman Yosi, who is obviously clearly very successful, still hungry to grow his game. I love that about Yosi.
Yeah, and I think that that's honestly that's a sign of a good leader is someone who's always willing to learn and willing to get better. Not just willing, but truly wants to get better and learn every step of the way. And I think he is well aware that he, as even as accomplished of a player as he is, he doesn't know everything. And I mean, we saw that at the beginning of the year, like we said, when he had to adjust to Andrew Brunette's system. And I think that, yeah, like yes, if number wise, maybe he's in the latter half of his career. You wouldn't know it to watch him play, but I think
No.
that, yeah, I think that that's just a sign of a great leader. And, you easily see why he's the captain in that room.
Yeah. How do you think he's going to finish when it comes to Norris voting?
So even though it's a regular season award, I do think that there's still going to be recency bias. And obviously of the three finalists with him, Quinn Hughes, Cale Makar, the other two are still in the playoffs and he is not. So, I mean, I think it's going to go to Quinn Hughes.
Mhm.
Whether Roman finishes second or third, it's really hard to say. I mean, of course, I'm definitely biased, but I think that he should at least finish second. But I
Yeah.
don't. Just if you're looking at his value to his team, and like obviously great offensive defenseman, we've talked about that, but he's also incredibly good in his own zone too. So I
Right.
don't want to discount that with blocking shots and breaking up passes and everything there. So I just think that that's I hope that the voters do not let recency bias sway them too much, just because they've seen the other two play more recently than they've
Right.
seen Roman. But yeah, I'm not sure. I really
Yeah.
can't get a read on it. I don't know.
It's tricky for me. I won't squawk if Quinn Hughes wins it. I get that. And look, I'm taking nothing away from Cale Makar. I would really like to see Yosi either win it or finish second. But again, we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. So speaking of veterans, we got to talk about three other veterans that I think were ridiculously successful for the Predators. Let's talk about Filip Forsberg, Ryan O'Reilly, and Gustav Nyquist. So I have to be totally honest with you. Ryan O'Reilly knocked my socks off this season. Like, I remember we were at Lowe's when it was announced that Barry Trotz had signed Ryan O'Reilly, and I was like, okay, all right,
Yeah.
what a difference Ryan O'Reilly and Gustav Nyquist have made. And you put them together with Filip Forsberg, you're looking at three veterans who in different statistics had career best seasons. What worked with these guys for, when you were watching them, Emma? What did you see from them?
Yeah, I think, and you mentioned O'Reilly, I would say I mean, when I picture Ryan O'Reilly, the image that comes to my head is, he's the captain of the 2019 Cup team in
Yes.
St. Louis. So I'm like, who he is, what he can do. And I'm like, okay, sure. The one I was really like, well, all right, I guess that's nice, was Gus Nyquist. I was like, oh, all right. Like, I don't know. It just seemed like kind of a random one. He was the one who really blew my socks off this year.
Yeah.
I mean, goodness. And I've talked about this before all year, really, that with that entire line, it was like a chicken and egg situation. It's like, which one of them is bringing out the best in the others? Or
Yeah.
I feel like they all do it. It was like cyclical how they did that. And I think that, what works is definitely, again, leadership. I think they're all fantastic leaders. I think the communication between those three is key. They always just seem to know where the other one is at any given time on the ice, and that's huge. I think that, just an understanding that they were expected to be leaders on the ice, off the ice. And I think that in terms of what worked, I mean, we've always known that Filip Forsberg's a goal scorer, like that's been his game, but he really kind of unlocked this whole new facet to his game this year as a playmaker as well, and not just a finisher. And so I think that, having playing with a legitimate, a top tier center like Ryan O'Reilly is huge for Filip Forsberg, because he really hasn't had a steady presence at
We
center.
haven't had that guy.
So he has that guy now, and I think that, that was huge for him, and being able to kind of let him really play his game and just kind of open it up. And I think, and like I said, Gus Nyquist was just the icing on the cake, because who knew he was going to come in and have a career year at 34 years old.
Right. Well, and it's so funny because I was with you with Gus Nyquist. I was like, I'm Swedish, so I'm like, oh, you signed a Swede. Great. Like, I'm here for that. I don't care what his stats are. He's a Swede. But it was so impressive to see what he came in and did. And I was really concerned too, because, at the end of last season, when he moved to Minnesota, like, he had a shoulder injury. He's 33 years old, 34 years old. What are you going to get from him? And like you said, you got a career year out of Gus Nyquist. You also got the greatest nickname from Ryan O'Reilly. Like, the best quote of the season is when he called them his Swedish meatballs. Like,
it was brilliant.
it was
Brilliant.
it was so fantastic.
Quote of the season. We were standing right there when he said it, and I was like, oh my God. Wow. I was like,
Yeah.
how did none of us think of this until just now?
And it was the delight with which he said it. It was so amazing.
Yeah.
But when we look ahead at these veterans and you look at next season, you have to say realistically, what is the confidence level that these guys are going to repeat it? And if you're Barry Trotz, are you looking to build, because he talks about want to build out that top 9, you have to wonder, is he looking to build that top 9, keeping these 3 together next season? Or do you think he needs to maybe spread the love in the top 6 and move some of them? If you were Barry Trotz, which we are this week, he's taking the week off, what would you do? What are your expectations from these guys? And do you keep them together? Do you split them up?
That is tough, I think, because yes, we saw, that was one of the most successful lines, not just on the Predators, but in the National Hockey League this year.
Right.
And I think, so by that logic, it's like, well, you'd be foolish to split them up. But I think that now, I don't know, because we saw how dependent this team became on that line. And it really was a 1-line team, maybe a 2-line team if you throw in the identity line, but they were dependent on for other things. They weren't really dependent on to generate offense.
Production.
Yeah. No, but you depend on them for the work ethic and the pace and the physicality and everything else. But, I honestly feel like you have to keep them together, at least at the beginning of the year. It would be foolish to split them up because, like I said before, with the chicken and egg, which one of them is making the other ones better? Just because Ryan O'Reilly brought out the best in Filip Forsberg, he may not bring out the best in, Mark Jankowski. I don't know.
Right.
It all depends. And I think you certainly have to try different combinations and see what works. But I don't think splitting them up just for the sake of spreading the love is really necessarily the way to go. But that said, you really do need to start seeing more out of your top 9. And I think the way to do that is to, maybe give those guys in the middle 6 kind of more opportunities, more responsibilities, just different. I don't know, because I think if you do spread the love too much and let's say you put Ryan O'Reilly on the 3rd line, then that line is going to become dependent on him too much.
Exactly.
And then they're not growing and they're not really taking over situations in the way that they could be, because they're kind of going to use him almost as a crutch, So I think that the better way to let them grow or let them develop is to leave that line together. Plus, again, it would be kind of silly to break them up, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think too, it's going to depend on what they do in free agency, which is something that we'll get to later this week. We'll do some free agency speculation. Oh, Lord, it just causes me anxiety. Coming up, though, we are going to talk about 2 more veterans on the blue line, talk about their seasons and also about timing, because we have these veterans with great seasons. But what does that really mean for the Nashville Predators in the future? We're going to talk about that coming up in just a minute. First, want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by our great friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, that's the formula for winning championships, but it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. They have superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you are into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. So coming up on tomorrow's show, Emma and I are going to continue wearing our general manager hats, and we are going to talk about the free agents, the UFAs. We keeping them, we getting rid of them. We're going to sift through all of those on tomorrow's episode. But to finish out today, I want to talk about two veteran defensemen that had very interesting, mostly interesting seasons, Ryan McDonagh and Luke Schenn. Ryan McDonagh, 74 games, 32 points, 34-year-old player. This is a guy who Barry Trotz, when he talks about serial winners, he's talking about Ryan McDonagh as well, won the cup several times. And it was an interesting season for McDonagh. Spent some of the time with Yosi, some of the time not with Roman Josi. Where do you see Ryan McDonagh? How did you anything stand out to you about his season this year? And what do you expect from him going forward next season, Emma?
I liked his season, and I liked him with Yosi, but I think I personally preferred him and Yosi split apart in a way. Just to that, I know we just said spreading the love isn't always the best thing, but on the back end it might be, and I sometimes it is. But I think that even offensively, I remember looking at this during the 18 game point streak, and I was doing research on it and who had the most points and everything. And I was kind of surprised that I think, and forgive me, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but Ryan McDonagh had more points during that streak than Ryan O'Reilly did. And it's like,
oh, wow.
And it was so quiet that he did it. It's not like he's out there scoring goals, but he had a lot of assists. And I think that, certainly that's not his game. He's not Roman Josi trying to, produce offense. But I think that we saw more of that from him this year than we did last year. I do like that. I don't know. Ryan McDonagh is an interesting one. I feel like sometimes he doesn't make a lot of mistakes, but when he does, they tend to be like very big, glaring mistakes.
Yeah.
But then he always bails himself out. It seems like he'll pass, he'll clear a puck, but put it right on the other team's tape. And you're like, what are you doing? But then he hauls his butt down to the other end of the ice and makes that diving save in front of the goalie. So it's like, yes, sometimes he will make those mistakes, but he usually bails himself out. Now, granted, he wouldn't have to bail himself out if he didn't make them in the first place, but whatever. I think, overall though, I liked his season. I like his, he's kind of a steadying presence on the back end. And, I was content with what we got from him this year.
Yeah. And then Luke Schenn. Oh, Luke Schenn. God bless Luke Schenn. When Luke Schenn was signed, you want to talk about Gus Nyquist, where you're like, Luke Schenn was signed. I don't know that it was maybe a collective that we heard from the Nashville Predators fan base. There were probably other words, descriptors from Luke Schenn. And then God bless Luke Schenn. He played 15 minutes and then missed 6-7 weeks in the beginning of the season. But I have to say, and I think we have to be honest about the fact that when Luke Schenn came back, it took him some time to adjust. He was really impressive to me down the stretch. And I loved what we saw from Luke Schenn in the postseason. Now, I know, again, he's not Roman Josi. Let's not kid ourselves. But people talk about his age, he's like 34 years old. Friends, Luke Schenn does not forecheck like an old man. Luke Schenn does not hit like an old man. Luke Schenn was super physical in the postseason. And I was like, he's gonna break a hip. He did not. So, you know what? My takeaway when I look at Luke Schenn was like, okay. And it was a good 2/3 of the season was like, okay. And then all of a sudden now I was like, okay, from Luke Schenn.
Yeah, I think you're maybe a little more generous than I would be, but I agree. I think that he certainly, and you can't fault a guy for being injured. I mean, the man had knee surgery. Like, that's not something you come back from quickly. And it took him some time, but I think I will agree with you. I think he leveled up in the postseason. He's very big and very physical, which I think was important against that opponent in Vancouver. Yes. I think that his style of play matched very well against that opponent. Yes, you're right. He doesn't hit or forecheck like an old man. I would argue, maybe back checks like an old man a little bit. Just sometimes, I mean, there were a few moments I feel like where he's just standing there and just watches the puck go past him. And I'm like, buddy, what are you doing? Yeah. Now, I think that, sometimes it just seemed like almost, I don't ever want to use a word like lazy, because I'm not doing what these guys are doing every day, but it almost looked like maybe half-hearted attempts to kind of, when he was defending the net. I feel like I would have liked to see a lot more from him when he was defending in front of the net. But to your point, I agree, when he's forechecking and getting guys out of the way, or fighting guys, standing up for his teammates, like, he was very good in that regard. I would like to see him defend more and defend better in front of the net.
More heartily. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I can't argue with that. I was amazed because expectations were so low, when he was gone for so long. So, like, for me, I'm like, okay, I saw a trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
I saw it. And
he did get better.
He did get better. But when you think about Barry Trotz saying we want to get younger and faster, I'm not sure that Luke Schenn is the name that you instantly go, that's going to get you there.
No.
But I do think he was another voice in the locker room that was really helpful for the team. So, we're going to give Luke Schenn that. So I would say overall, this was a really good season for the veterans. A lot of them are coming back. Final quick question for you, Emma. When we look at these veterans, we look at kind of age, where they're at. Just yes or no, is there a window for these guys to win a cup?
For like Ryan O'Reilly and Roman Yosi, I will say yes, because I think that those guys can play, like I said, into their 50s. I think they can do it. And
right.
But realistically, I don't know. I mean, it would be close. I think that maybe, though. Maybe.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. Well, that's going to do it for our talk on the veterans. Of course, tune in tomorrow. We got to talk about UFAs. Are Emma and I going to sign them? Or are we going to let them walk? We're going to tell you what we're going to do with those guys. Before we go, Emma, can you tell everyone where they can find your work online?
Yes, I am the Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News. So you can find me there, or you can find all of my work. I will post it on Twitter at Emma_Lingen.
And you can find my work at penaltyboxradio.com. I am on social media at AnnK_Mama on Ice. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Locked On Predators podcast. And thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We will be back tomorrow to do a little more general managing. We'll see you then.